Okay, hi everyone. This is the Drupal 8 Critical Issues meeting for August 14th of 2015. We'll have Alex Bott, Danielle Wiener, Francesco Placella, and Sasha Glossebacher, Gabor Hoichi, myself, and for some reason I always have Alex Bott first here on my list, so let's start with Alex.
Yeah, that's why it's better when I run the meetings. I get to go last. Anyway, okay, so since I last attended this meeting, I have been all about the safe markup. We've got lots and lots of progress on the removal of safe markup set issue, which is a meta issue which kind of like contains lots of sub-issues, which is all about why we shouldn't be using safe markup set in any of our code, apart from in safe markup itself. That's issue 2501931, just putting that in IRC. So at the moment there's MWDS, the Midwest Developer Summit, and they're hacking on these issues, and they're getting lots of progress. We've got plans for pretty much all of them, and we've got new plans for even some of the safe markup sets that we just decided to document. And I'm quite hopeful that at least like the safe markup set method will be able to be protected or even removed before Drupal 8. I'm actually looking at the current state. There's one nasty use of it in the field system. Fields has its own kind of like XSS filter trait, which is a bit weird, and I think I've got another way of addressing that. So going to try to do that. But the main issue that I've been focused on is the slightly more controversial 254994.3, which I'm pasting into IRC, which is a plan to dismember safe markup and remove as many of the methods before we get to the release candidate as possible. Basically, it's broken. The way in which it stores safe strings and it mixes filtered safe strings and escaped safe strings is dangerous in itself. We have tests that test that things are double escaped. We have tests that test things aren't escaped when they should be escaped. We have places in core where we're calling safe markup check plain and then transforming the case, so that would lose safeness immediately if that does stuff. It's a complete and utter quagmire, and it's really hard to actually get a kind of scope on how many problems it's going to be causing us, because we don't test everything. It's when we in our tests, quite a lot of the kind of placeholder text we generate doesn't contain HTML, so we don't know if markup is being escaped in the way that we think it should be. So it's a really big and tricky issue, and I guess it's really a legacy of the way that we kind of like pushed auto escaping in just before the beta in Amsterdam. But I think we have to do something before IC, because it's kind of manageable with just core, but once contrib comes to play, the way in which safe markup can have side effects scares the living daylights out of me, because it's so unpredictable. We have situations where like there's a translation bit of code that only works because the safe markup format is doing a check plain before it does a completely unescaped insertion. And and that's totally unpredictable, like the fact that would happen. So yeah, I'm really I've looked at a lot of safe markup code in core in the past week, and the more I look, the more I find, and I keep on finding new things. And there's a views hook, the views substitutions hook, that would break all views forms if you returned unsafe markup. from the hookup implementation. Like, it's nuts. Like, it's just the more you look.
So we tried to do too much magic then?
We enabled auto escape, and then we didn't let auto escape do its thing, and we didn't follow through in checking all the places where we'd added calls to safe markup. And then there's just this fact that it is just one big huge static. So at the moment, even in our unit tests, if you reset that static on every single test call, our unit tests fail because of bleeding between the tests. It's just bad programming practice to have a big static list of strings that stays there and can affect whether markup is filtered or escaped. We knew what we were doing. We took on the technical debt before the beta, and we didn't. We filed one issue to remove calls to safe markup set, but I don't think that really was the entire scope of it. Anyway, that's my safe markup piece for the week. Next.
Okay, next one's Daniel. Hello.
There we go. Yeah, I was mainly working on the update PHP issue, which is about moving the current so we currently use the routing system in order to get to update PHP, and the issue is about moving that to its own file. So things which can happen in the early Bootstrap doesn't break update PHP, which is kind of important if we want to change anything happening before routing, like URL aliases. So currently in head, you couldn't change the schema of URL alias tables, something like that. But everything which happens dynamically on an event, on kernel event request or something, might be problematic because that currently happens before routing starts. So that would be before even update PHP is triggered. And the issue is about moving that. Besides from that, I did reviews and small other stuff. That's from me.
Very cool. Francesco?
Hi all. So this week I've been working mainly on the entity definition of update manager. Applies update can fail, and if it fails, it can leave the system in non-reliable states. The node ID is 25422748, and here is the link. So we've been talking through this for a couple of weeks now, and I think we're now in a good position. I've started working on it a few days ago, and meanwhile I also got the 8 Accelerate grants, so I should be able to focus a bit more on that now. Actually, I think we have a good starting point yet, because Alex Bronstein already provided some good manual replacements for the stuff that was supposed to happen automatically previously. And in the last days, I implemented most of the bullets in the proposed solution. And actually, I think although probably there initially were some concerns about this being some kind of regression, I think actually we are making things simpler, at least for users, because if developers do the things right, users will have less fiddling with the update UI to do. And actually, I think developers are not going to lose much, because we have filed, actually Jay Hadstrom filed a PR against Rush to provide the same functionality we had in the update UI through a Rush command. And we're still discussing a couple of details, but I think it looks solid, so I'm hopeful it will go in sooner than later, although the maintainers didn't show up yet. And actually, right now, I just completed providing some additional test coverage that implements bullet 7, which is the solution Catch proposed a few weeks ago, about which actually let us solve the main problem we have with entity updates, which is the fact that since they are based on definitions, they may be based on definition written in code. You can possibly have individual updates if you are going to apply multiple update functions in a single update run. And Catch proposed to instead of relying on the definitions living in code, to rely on those living in the state, which are the ones we use to compare and find differences and so detect changes, and that works perfectly. I was able to write a test that implements actually the most tricky case or one of the most tricky cases we were envisioning. That is, for instance, adding a change and then reverting it in the subsequent update function, and also migrating that data in between. And this is working, and it's working both with individual updates applied, so emulating single update runs, single module updates, and also with applying all the updates in a single bulk in a row. So actually emulating going from, I don't know, version 8.0 to version 8.2, for instance, of a module. So I'm pretty confident we are on the good track, and that's all for me. Sorry, actually, I would like to discuss an implementation detail later, which may be fairly important, I think. But yeah, I think we are on a good track.
Yeah, let's talk about that later then. Catch just arrived. You want to go next, or?
Yep. Yeah. So I'm late. Been looking at a lot more of the safe markup things this week, and Axe's new critical, trying to review some blockers. A few have gone in, pushed back on one or two of the other ones, and then reviewed Patch's entity updates patch yesterday, which looks like it's coming on really well, and then bits and pieces on the PHP issues, trying to organise them and things like that. As usual, I can't remember what I was doing since last week, but that's most of the stuff in the past 2 or 3 days.
Okay. Cool. Sasha?
Yes, so I haven't worked too much on criticals this week. I've been involved in some of the upgrade path related. There's at least entity definitions update stuff that I still need to review. We'll try to do it as soon as possible. Not directly related, what I've been working on quite a bit this week is updating beta 8 and 11 sites to beta 13, which is quite a lot of work, but it's looking quite nice, and I managed to do it so far. So things seem to be basically working. I'm currently, for example, indirectly testing that update PHP front controller patch, because I need that for one of the changes that I have to make, where one of the country modules got renamed, and I need to be able to mess with the configuration before the container is rebuilt and so on. Yes, one thing related to the update path that we discussed quickly that I want to discuss later is having a dump that contains real data, because our database dump right now is mostly empty.
Oh, so but you would suggest to still start with beta 12, but with some data.
Yes, but like have some nodes and terms in there, because the only reason it's passing right now is because we have no data. So in head-to-head, we found that, or in updating, we found that the node is published change, where we made the node status field an entity key, had a hidden schema change, because entity keys automatically get not null set to true, which results in a schema change that's not visible anywhere, and we only don't see it in our tests because there is no node template, so the update can automatically update it. So we would have noticed this if there would be nodes in the database.
That's a really good find, and yet another reason why the automatic entity update issue should be critical.
Yeah. Also good on testing the update PHP font controller. Nice.
So I'll open an issue for a new dump that is beta 12 and contains some data. And because that's starting to block upgrade partitions, do people want that critical or just a major?
Speaking about that, yesterday while working on the test coverage for the entity updates issue, I initially tried to implement that as a regular DB updates test, and actually I found it very hard to provide the right data in an additional setup file. So I was wondering whether there's any recommended procedure, because I couldn't find any good, useful hint in the official documentation, or whether it's supposed to work that way. So basically manually importing the database, fiddling with it in a live site, and then re-exporting, diffing, and copying stuff around.
I think what you just said is more or less the way, but if you only have a few rows, then you can write manual code in the import file.
Okay.
But if you have lots, then you have to kind of like do it, and hack it out and put it in a file. I don't think there's a better way. It would be nice if there was a better way, but that's what I always used to do for Drupal 7 updates.
Okay, because basically I needed to hack the URL generator class just to be able to log in, because otherwise I would get an error. I would be stuck there, and it took me a while to figure out. So yes, yeah, I was wondering whether there was a better way to do that, but yeah, probably.
Well, that particular problem, I mean, I'm not sure like whether we can require for certain updates to use the update free access thing.
It would be better not to. Like the update free access is for when you forget to log in to run the updates, as opposed to when we break logins entirely.
So does it mean that our database dump should have a session entry?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because I mean that's what we talked about, right? We first log in, then update the code, and then one update PHP.
Sorry, probably I didn't explain myself. Actually, the problem I had, I was getting an error first, and then after a small hacking, an exception. So it wasn't a problem of providing credentials or so on. It was a problem of just being able to access any route. So I had to provide a couple of fixes to the URL generator, but nothing that would actually make sense to commit. For instance, not throwing that exception. And so I got a bunch of notices, but I was able to actually see the page and download it.
Well, but that was after code change, right?
After changing the URL generator, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, I mean your actual patch you worked on.
No. That was also on ahead.
Oh.
It was basically, it was not finding the current route. I think it was not finding any route, and so the URL generator was breaking badly. Okay. Anyway, I will find an issue. I didn't want to hijack the discussion.
Okay. So that only leaves myself, I think. So I've been working on reviewing things for different criticals, also looking at security issues, and also working with the DA on infrastructure blockers for the Drupal 8 release. They put in a lot of effort to get all the blockers done, so localized Drupal.org now runs live on Drupal 7. Yay, it's not on Drupal 6 anymore. And the good thing about that is now we have only a couple things to resolve on the site that would help language fallback and translation accessibility for people on Drupal 8 when it's released, when things like shortly after release, etc. All of those windows where the different processes are not yet done for translation generation. So that's finally online, so we can now hopefully get more people to work on resolving those things, and then that will be done. And then next week, Acquia has an on-site in Boston, and we plan to use as much time possible to look at Drupal 8 criticals. So I hope we'll be able to make a dent in how things are from the office of the CTO, not the whole company, obviously. So yeah. So hope to contribute even more as a group next week. So that's it for me. Who has discussion points?
I do.
Yeah, I reckon.
Go for it, Pladge.
Let's go for it.
Okay, so talking again about the entity definition updates issue. Actually, while writing the task coverage, I realized once more, actually, that probably it would be a good idea if the entity manager returned the field definitions and entity types stored in state instead of the ones living in code. Because otherwise, when actually applying individual updates, we have to recreate the condition we are expecting, that is exactly the ones that are stored in state, because otherwise the update is running under the wrong conditions. And actually, I think it would be safer anyway. It's a thing that I was thinking about even when writing the first patches, that probably it would be a good idea to always work with the state definitions, because that way you are sure that probably most of the code is not breaking because it's working with definitions that match the actual schema, or hopefully it does that. At least it's more likely that they match the actual schema, and that will make things easier for developers writing the updates, I think. So yeah, thoughts welcome.
I think that makes sense, yes. I think we discussed this before, yes. When do you then now switch? So at which point do you take the current definitions and then put them back into state?
I'd say when you apply the related updates, or when you are installing, you are creating them. So when you are creating, actually, we are notifying the creation of new definitions. You will put them in state automatically, and then the system will use them. And when you're at the end of an update application, you will also put the new code definition in state.
So to be honest, so don't the automated entity updates already update the state, or is that not in
No, yeah, they're doing that, so probably that part's already work. I think the main change would be to an internal change in the entity manager to make it use the definition stored in state for regular usage.
Yes, that does have interesting, because right now we have all those cache tags and invalidate and then build it again if a change happened. So a lot of that would change. I'm wondering if, I guess it will just work, but then still quite an impact that it has internally on how things work. For example, when you create a new field in this interface. It's interesting. But I mean, we're basically doing this already for the field map, where on having a new field or field storage we automatically put it into state and update state. That's kind of everything then basically will work like that.
So I guess that's an okay to try and go on that way, right?
I think so, yes. At least we should like just do it and then see if we have any issues in the test or so.
Do you think it would make sense to do it in a separate issue? Because at the moment the test is doing some weird things to cope with that, and yeah, we definitely can remove the weird things once that issue is fixed, but it's not a great example at the moment.
It might make sense to do it separately, as just at least also to see how it behaves
Okay.
without those changes from that issue. If it's
Okay. And last thing, unrelated, actually it's related with the entity updates issue, but it's another bug, let's say. I realized that actually we are in trouble when we have a module that's providing a storage class for an entity type that otherwise wouldn't be providing it. Probably we have similar issues whether there's a module that is switching in a different storage class. Actually, because we trigger notifications in the wrong points, let's say. Basically, the example where I found out this is with the contact and contact storage test modules. So the contact module defines the contact message entity type, and the creation is notified when the contact module is installed. And actually, basically, the creation of the schema is strict only when the two modules, contact and contact storage, are enabled together. Otherwise, you can end up having the contact module without the storage. I think, actually, I'm not sure these are the right details, but actually the problem is that I didn't debug it in detail because I wanted to have something working. But I think I will open a new issue because I think we have something to fix in that area. Actually, it's not a very common case, but not so uncommon to probably to just forget about it. So I will open an issue about that when I know a bit more about it.
I actually had exactly that problem in my beta 8 to 13 update because
Okay.
I am using contact storage, and I noticed that I was missing the state information for it. So the storage is there for me, but the state information somehow isn't. And I noticed it in the updates because the head-to-head module looks at entity definition stored in there to figure out what to update, and somehow it didn't find and didn't update contact message there, so I had to do this myself.
Did you already create an issue?
Not yet.
Okay, so let's coordinate on that.
But speaking of head-to-head tests, it would be very interesting to run the head-to-head tests with that state change, because it's running tests from updates from beta 8, 9, 10, 11, and so on. And that would give you a lot of test coverage and scenarios.
Yeah, cool.
How the state, returning field definitions from state would affect the system or not.
Okay, sounds good. I will ping Jay Hedstrom once there's some code in the new issue about that.
Yes.
So this is all for me, thank you.
Catch, Daniel, do you want to talk about the update .php issue? Because I know, Catch, you expressed some reservations about the current approach that you saw, but I think, like Sasha's point about needing something to be able to change the module name and before the container is rebuilt might mean that Daniel's approach is probably the way it's the way we might need to go.
My only concern on that issue is that we don't do it all in one go. So that Sasha's renaming a module, I think, is what we need hook early update in for, which is its own issue.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Get that part in already solves some of the problems, and then hook update early also solves more problems, and then maybe we need its own container for the normal updates as well. But yeah, don't do too much in one issue.
Yeah, especially with this, because it's so confusing. Which different updates which need different things, and where the dependencies are, and that leads into the issues because people get turned around a lot. So just it's only about the scope of that issue. It's not about the need for it. But then if we think we need hook early update in, then we need to look at whether that issue is critical again or not. But what I don't want to do is sneak that in another critical issue while the other one's major. Like, we need to evaluate each one on its own merits. That was the only concern, not with the patch, just where it was.
I have a question related to the current approach. It seems like we are introducing update.php file in the root folder. So why would it need a routing.yaml entry as well? Because
the point is that we are linking to that URL in various places in core and tests and whatnot. So we need a routing entry in order to be able to link to it.
Okay.
Don't we have an API to link to files? I've forgotten which one it is, but I'm sure there's a way to link to arbitrary.
Yes, there is, but I try to limit the scope of changes as much as possible.
Okay, so we could have like a follow-up that's like remove the root and link to it.
I mean, it's kind of like the front route and non and current and what's not in there. It's kind of like that.
Okay.
We are just simulating a URL. But yeah.
Yeah, other than that, I think the patch seems ready to me. I reviewed that earlier today.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not pessimistic about it.
So if no one has any reservations, I'm going to RTBC it now.
How have you tested it? Other than just it's pretty hard to test, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you would need something which breaks kind of early.
Do we need to expand like the monkeys in the control room test to put monkeys in the update path?
I mean, we have one test which breaks routing, and then check whether running update PHP works.
Yeah, I thought that for this issue, I thought that test was enough.
Okay.
But yeah, for the other one, then we might need some monkeys. Yeah.
What I'd like to do is test the latest patch on my site as well. Because one problem that I have right now is that in that early update functions, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the latest patch yet. I'm using an older version, and I had the problem that when I'm accessing the config storage directly, not using any cache layers or so on, then the caches are not getting invalidated. And when I don't know which cache is used, for example, if a site is using Redis to store the config cache, then I don't know how and when I can invalidate those caches.
But do you need to invalidate it? I mean, doesn't update PHP invalidates all of it anyway at the end?
Yes, but it's not about the end, it's about the start. So I'm changing core extension and I'm adding a module in there or renaming a module in there. And then I want to run updates, and then the module needs to be there already. So it's loaded in the container and the classes are there.
So actually this issue isn't going to help you with that at all. this is what we were talking about earlier. There's another issue that adds to early updates.
Mhm.
That depends on this one, but this is not going to help that.
But,
Also,
but how is the early update going to be able to flush the caches afterwards before the main updates are running? Because the code is so. Are we saying that everything that would be affected on a cache flush has to go in an early update?
I think so.
I would rather say that hook update early, or rather like the result of all of them would result in a that you can actually clear all caches afterwards
Yeah.
and rebuild the container maybe.
Well, okay. So I think a lot of stuff is going to end up moving into this early update, and then the question is well, if we've at the moment we're discussing early, middle, and late updates, like, do we really need all three, or is it the case that what we really need is like hook update n being the equivalent of the early update, and the mythical late updates that are actually able to interact with the API and do things like as you would do in normal code. Like, I'm just like really concerned that we're going to end up introducing a 3-stage update system when what we really need is a 2-stage update system.
I'm not sure about adding that much in early updates. For example, so my process right now for testing looks like this: that I have one early update, I run that, then I need to clear the caches because the modules picked up. Then I need to enable beta to beta and set the version there, and then run updates. But the problem is that early cache clear is running into some notices and errors. But I'm just ignoring them; they don't matter. But it's about like the missing line code in the system side configuration, and I'm not sure if we should fix stuff like that. Because we're going to have to do a lot, as you said, we have to do a lot of stuff in early updates where we don't have a full environment, which might make it hard to do those changes.
So wait, is that caused by the fact that you are running on beta 7 or 9 and you're updating, or is it a general problem? Like, would we have avoided that if we would have thought about update path before?
I'm not sure.
But yeah, the problem is basically, as always, the code is in a different state as the data.
Yes.
And the point is like, at which point can we guarantee that the data and the code is in a good enough state to be able to flush all the caches? And at the moment, in head, that's not tied in with when the container is rebuilt, or the container should be good, because at the moment we're saying the container should be good before you run hook update n. In some ways, it needs to be, and then we flush the caches afterwards. And so we've got one update hook, which is problematic. But what it feels like to me is we have a need for update hooks that can run before a container rebuild and a flush all caches, and update hooks that can run after. And that's all we have, right?
Well, we definitely have at least that. I think there's a question whether something like the block context update, would that have been an early update? Because it certainly wouldn't have been a late update.
Well, at least conceptually, you don't need. I mean, it doesn't break anything of running update PHP. That's my understanding of hook update early is everything you need in order to run update PHP.
Yes. So,
and you don't render a block there.
Yeah. So for me, there's a difference between stuff that breaks update.php, but stuff that breaks like an actually running site, an entity, the hooks, and all of these things. Like, that's two different levels of broken. Whether we need three update stages to handle the 2 levels of broken before we can do those things, I don't know. Maybe we only need one and update dependencies. But I do think that there's 2 classes of issue before you just get to changing values.
Yep, I can see that.
So I think that the actual fundamental issue is that update PHP is still really bundled with the actual site. And in case we can get rid of that, I think a 2-step process might be enough.
Yeah. So that's back to the kind of dream of installer and update actually being like mini applications that are outside your site.
Yeah. Well, it's not that hard to use a dedicated container for them, but the problem is that all of our code is tangled or is coupled together with all of other subsystems of our code. So like you need render API and theme API and cache contexts and I don't know what, just to go to update PHP.
Well, you do, but if we do the early updates, then I don't think we want to render anything on that page except for error messages.
You are totally right about that, but that basically limits our capabilities of what we can do in update early, right? Because we just have the 30 seconds, or what is the default time limit? Something like that.
You can increase the time limit.
Is that like a thing on all hosts?
Well, if it's not, then they get 30 seconds, right? but those hosts are going to have to do it. I mean, they're going to have trouble with things other than update.php. And I think like not having batch, like we don't want to have batch is a massive dependency for early updates. We can't have batch support. That's just it's incompatible unless we can create an entirely separate batch system that doesn't have core dependencies. Just for that, like it has to be like a one hit and then redirect to the real update runner. And 30 seconds is quite a long time.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it depends. I mean, if you have a big site, you don't have the problem, right? Because then you can run Drush.
Yeah. I mean, we could run the early updates and then redirect to a path that just does a cache clear and container rebuild, because they do take long enough that they'd take a chunk out of 30 seconds. And then from there, redirect. So it would be like a very manual batch thing. That it's not a real batch. It would just be like a couple of redirects, and then you get to the page and you run your updates. I don't know.
That makes sense, right? If we just do like the most limited like manual batch, where like you go to the page, it says it's got these updates to run. You press the run button, and at the end it goes, are there more updates to run? Because like there's some light loop there that checks like against time and max execution time, and then if there's still updates to run, it just returns you to that page. Then you're not using batch, you're using the user to do the batch, but it's fine because it's like if you don't do this correctly, then your site's really broken.
I think so.
Because there aren't going to be that many of these early updates, right? So, like, if there were so many that they couldn't be completed within the max execution time that's available on the server, then we have a serious problem. And like, not doing them all and then going to update.php is going to be really bad. So we can't do that. But also, I think like avoiding the whole batch system and the render system would make is good. So let's just make the user do the batch.
Right, so I think we're saying that the early updates should never ever be dealing with any large data sets anyway, right?
Well, that's hard to know, isn't it?
Well, update.php, not all of whatever the normal updates shouldn't depend on massive data sets. What massive data sets could they depend on?
Yeah, right, because we will, I mean, it's not about nodes or users or something like that. It's just about stuff like config, dot extension, or the router table or something like that. And
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why we have a three-stage update system, though, because you do need batch if you're going to do big updates to.
Yep, you do. I think you're right. I think we've argued ourselves into the three-stage update system. You've managed to convince me.
So does that mean we want to bump those issues? I just demoted them this week. Back up again, or are we saying this would be a desirable position to get into? But Sash, it sounds like your site is absolutely broken and can't update at the moment. So for me, that's the one site that is actually trying to update can't update. Then doesn't bode well for the update system.
Yes, but to be fair, my site is also on beta 8, so that doesn't really count.
Yeah.
But the problem is contrib, not code, so that can happen anytime.
Right.
So just to be clear, this update.php issue, the next step is to manually test some updates.
I mean, it's not like we don't test any updates. I mean, all of our update path tests are now using this new file. So
yeah, I can test it with cacheability metadata issue, which I was working on.
Yeah.
I agree that caches, let's get a beta 12 database dump and have it with real data. To me, that feels critical, because if we've got current updates that are broken, or if we have current schema changes which are broken, then we should know that. And the fact that we don't is a big worry.
I agree that this is critical.
And I've nearly opened it. I've been slowly typing, so it will be opened by within 10 minutes of the full finishing.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think we should certainly work on the update early one and see what kind of problems are in there. But because time-wise, that would probably be more problematic than deciding whether it's critical or not. And then if people actually want updates, or at least Sasha wants updates, we will be able to justify whether it's critical or not.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I think the thing with that issue is it's going to end up being critical at some point. It's just whether it blocks something before or after release, and we have no way to know that. So if we can get it done, then it's done, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
But I mean, what is in there which cannot be fixed at any point?
I don't think there's anything that can't be fixed at any point. So the question is whether we have issues that are independently critical that rely on having that infrastructure in place.
Oh, I see.
So I think that's the thing that it would be unequivocally critical as soon as we have that issue that needs it. At the moment, it's like a time bomb, but it depends when it goes off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it will certainly explode in contrib, right?
Yeah.
That's a contrib blocker. Yeah, then it's kind of critical.
I think that there will still be a maintainer proviso during the RC stage that major bugs can be committed if we think that they're going to cause critical and contrib. So I think like we can certainly. I don't think we need to make this RC blocking whilst there isn't a critical, whilst the time bomb hasn't gone off. Right.
I mean, this is definitely one we should put in RC if we.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and even if it's ready and the time bomb hasn't gone off and we're in RC, I think we can make good arguments because of the time bomb that we would get it done. So
it's a post-RC critical.
Potentially.
Is that a new thing? Okay.
No, it's not a new thing. It's just a major, and we have discretion. Like, we can do sensible things. Like, our rules don't prevent us from doing sensible things.
Yeah.
If we agree and we understand the if there's technical debt that it introduces, that we're going to pay it down quickly. That's the thing. But this one isn't. This is solving technical debt that has existed since we started doing all the work we've done in Drupal 8. Cool. Has anyone got any other issues to discuss?
I have one more question about our update tests. So we have this update path test-based test. And what it's doing is it's importing the beta 12 database, and then it goes to the front page and checks that the site page title is correct. Which breaks as soon as you have a change that is breaking it enough for the front page to cause a notice or an error or something. And that's exactly what happened in that use cacheable dependency something interface rename. Because it used to work, but now we committed the leading slash fix. Now the front page works again and shows the view again.
Oh.
And now it fails because it's going to the front page, it's executing the view that has broken configuration, that hasn't been updated yet, and it's giving you a notice and later on an exception.
So why wasn't it updated yet? I mean, we should have a hook update and fixing that.
We do, but the problem is that method doesn't run updates.
So we are at a stage in which we have updated the code, but not the database.
Yes, because we have two update tests in there, and I'm not sure if it's not running updates for a reason or to do it.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's certainly wrong to not run update PHP.
I think so as well, yes.
Yeah.
We should add this run updates call before we go to the front page, basically.
Yep, agreed. Where's that happening?
Update path test-based test database loaded.
Oh yeah, that's nuts.
Okay.
That why doesn't that, yeah. Whoa.
It's fascinating that this is the first issue which had that problem, because if you think about that, the block one, because we don't have any blocks with content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have no blocks with content.
Okay, we need actual data.
Yes, we do.
Open the issue.
Damn it. I thought that's not the point of the play, to actually have data.
Yeah, everything works much better when you're not trying to actually update any data with update PHP. Like, automatic entity updates. Woohoo!
Yeah. Pretty much every for each is so fast.
Yeah. So Drupal would be the best CMS if there was no content to manage.
Nice. Well, the person knows CMS.
Well, empty is not a special case.
So we should rebrand as configuration management system.
Yes. Cool.
So I was wondering whether it would make sense to keep the bare dump and provide a populated one side by side.
I think it's worthwhile only having like one with content, like testing an update PHP without a site which is using a theme with blocks, with content, with users. is pointless.
Okay.
Except, is there any situation where we might have tests that fail when you don't have content,
Maybe.
or like cost?
Well, there are things like the default front page, but what is the point? I mean, just think about a site without content. I mean, it's not even that horrible if that breaks.
Yeah.
Well, like if you had lots of users but no nodes, or you know, like that.
Well, okay. Well, no nodes. I mean, that changes the behavior of the front page, right?
Yeah. I think that I think maybe it is worthwhile keeping Bear around, but we should definitely try and review. But when we review hook update and implementations, one of the things that we should be considering is what happens when there is data, what happens when there is no data.
Well, actually, the main thing I had in mind is whether you want to provide your own data and you just want to avoid deleting the existing one. But yes, what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we have to think about it. It's like part of the review step, because like it's impossible to predict what a hook update end might do, and then when we review them, we have to look at them and go, well, like that isn't going to work if there's no nodes, because it's going to fail for because it's an empty array or whatever that it's getting. But it's bad code if it treats empty as a special case.
So we're saying we should only have the populated database.
It feels like that's way more important than having the empty test case.
Yeah. So do we want to install every core module in that database as well? Because I don't think we did that in the original done through that, like statistics. And,
yes, please. Yeah, have everything running.
And forums.
Yep, forums
and comments and right. So I'll add the issue summary. Tasks.
You realize that means also translation, multilingual stuff, and so on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if we don't do it, then it's going to come back and bite, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to have like the whole caboodle, like translated content, translated config. Let's find out.
Yeah, multilingual time bombs wouldn't be any use, actually.
Right, I've updated it. If people think I put a link to the issue in IRC. If people think of extra things that we need that aren't there, please add to it. So, because I don't think we want to do this too many times.
Yep.
Oh, actually, on this note, beta 12 is good now. I've been thinking in my head that we should try to start dump as long as possible, because that's like the worst case for an update. But do people have general ideas once we hit release candidate whether we keep doing that or whether we update to a release candidate database dump? So that is a no.
So we then basically don't test some of the update end functions at some point anymore, because our database then will then also have the new schema.
Yeah, we'd basically say it would be like hookup. We'd probably add in hook update in last removed, and say like you get to beta, and then you get to RC, and you have to go to RC. You can't start going from beta to 8.0.6 or whatever.
Does that make sense? Things easier?
It might make things easier if we've got beta issues that come back to bite us in like 6 months or something. Like a test that only fails if you're on beta 12, but doesn't fail with a new release candidate. And the question is, do we want to keep testing that old database dump to have things going through, or eventually cut the losses on the dump and go from release candidate and assume that everyone is on release candidate or later from a point? I don't know what the answer is to that.
But wouldn't that mean that you would have problems going from beta whatever 13 to RC and then RC to this new stage? Like, so you would still have the problem, wouldn't we?
Well, you have to go one release to release. What I'm saying is that the core dump, we would say it has to start from a release candidate point. So we'd more or less drop the old update. So you'd be able to go sequentially through the betas to the release candidates, but not ever. But we'd make it impossible to skip from beta to a stable release, both in core with a hookup update last removed, and because we dropped the tests and the coverage for them.
I don't know why we would do that.
That's okay. I mean, I don't think we have to make it impossible. It's just like we could end up with issues which only.
But those sites might have gone to RC before and done everything as we said, and then still have update issues.
Because of an unfixed issue. Yes, that's true. Yeah. Well, let's leave it in then. That's fine. There's probably less work as well. So yeah, that's cool. I'll try to stop thinking about it.
It's hard. Cool. Well, I think we're done here today. Unless anyone's got any last quick thing, I think we've exhausted the update issues.
So I have a question about this string type field doesn't consider empty string as a value. Empty value. In this, we are changing the user install key to empty. I pointed that in my last comment, and apparently we need that now, and we can't remove that. So, do we need an update hook for that?
So what is currently in the database? Isn't it an empty string? I mean, or is it a null? Let's check. So users data table. Interesting. So my users data table is completely empty.
Yeah, because that's not the field table.
Oh, sorry. Okay. How do I see?
Users field data.
Yeah, right. So it's an empty string for me. So the data pretty much doesn't change. So I don't think we need an update function.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, users data is one of those weird tables that is a way for modules to add to the user in a way that's not fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super odd, isn't it? Like, why is it special cased for users? What are, I mean, it's much like have profile modules doing core.
It's history. It's just history.
It's just history. Stop
Yeah.
looking.
We should migrate it to the, I don't know, a map field or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one generic for all of it.
Which is to kill it, but none of them succeeded.
The old data was actually kind of a map, and that's exactly what we removed because it was problematic, because it was impossible to clean up and so on. So no, I don't think we should make it a map.
Well, but
Okay.
We had this user.data column that just was a serialized array, and you could put in there whatever you want, and it was impossible to clean up and track and maintain. And that's why I made it a table so you can clean up data of a module when it's uninstalled.
But why can't we just, I mean, we could just have all the data which is in its dedicated table, but store that internally, but still have the same APIs.
Anyway, this is Drupal 9. We don't need to change
Not
this.
necessarily.
Yes.
We don't need to change it now.
That's true.
But it is funny looking at it. Cool. So, Gabble, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. So thanks everyone for coming. Have a nice weekend, and let's rock this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
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 Right.